Welcome, friends and guild members, to the second to last fight of Bastion of Twilight. Well, we have nearly finally cleared this blasted place. It took us a little while to actually work up the nerve to do this fight because, as I mentioned in my Valiona and Thoralion kill video, if you just watch a video on this fight, it has the feeling of an Omnitron on crack because it's again takes the concept of multiple bosses that you have to take on at the same time, except these are more difficult than the individual Omnitron bosses. So we were a little worried that this fight was going to be a bit more of a gear check than it actually was, but we finally walked in here shortly after our first Maloriak kill, and it surprised all of us how simple this actually was. If you educate your raid ahead of time on the abilities that these bosses have, it's not a difficult fight in any real aspect because the way they have it set up is twice in the battle you're going to fight two elementals of opposite elements, and really they have abilities that mirror each other. The fire guy has abilities that counteract the waters, and the waters has abilities that counteract the fires. And as long as you know how each one needs to be counteracted, there really isn't a whole lot of strategy to the fight, in all honesty. And because it's really, the entire fight is really just reacting to certain abilities that you get hit by. So really, the fight comes down to a matter of how well your raid members can pay attention to the DBM callouts, because that's really all it is. It's you get the callout for Aegis of Fire, you turn to the fire boss and DPS him. Uh, you see the pop up for Hydro Lance, you interrupt it, and that's really all the fight is. It's really almost an attention checker. How well are you paying attention to the fight? And the one thing I will say about this fight is I do appreciate that Blizzard brought back the mechanic of DPS being organized enough to take down two bosses at similar times. Now, we did see this in the Throne of Four Winds, having to take down the two opposite bosses and then the raid converging on the single one. And uh, it is kind of weird for them to use the exact same mechanic twice in the same raid tier. But it's always been an interesting mechanic because it's really a test of how well your guild can work together and communicate, because if one boss is going down too fast, you need to communicate to stop DPS on that boss and work on the other one and bring them down together, because the mechanic here in this fight is as soon as one of the bosses hits 25% health, they go away and the next two come out. And as soon as one of these bosses in the second set right here hits 25, they go away, and then all four previous bosses come together and form an elemental monstrosity whose health is determined by the remaining health of all four of the previous bosses. So the idea for the fight is you want to get all four bosses as low to their health as possible. So when they converge, you hopefully have a final boss of very little more, if 6 million health, which is the target factor, because I believe if you bring each boss down to 25% health, 25% of their health is just a hair over 1.5 million, so 1.5 times 4, simple math. Um, and the second set here is actually, I would say, easier than the first set because there's really only two mechanics really going on here. You hop in a tornado to avoid an earthquake, and you get grounded by the flashing orbs to avoid a thundershock. And really, that's for the most part all there is going on during this fight. One person will get a lightning rod debuff, but that's a simple move out of the raid if you get an arrow above your head mechanic. And if you can't handle that at this point in the raiding, well, you shouldn't really be raiding, in all honesty. And here you've seen we've taken down the bosses, and they're all going to converge and create the elemental monstrosity. And the monstrosity here is probably the heaviest DPS race that we've seen this far in this tier of raiding, because he's doing constant damage to the raid members. So uh, it all harks back to trying to bring down the previous bosses as low as possible, because if you left one or two with too much health, he is going to have too much health in the end for your raid to be able to take down, quite honestly, before everybody eats it. And you can see the fight mechanics here are built around a DPS. You have very little to avoid. From a ranged standpoint, the only thing to avoid are the little fireballs on the ground, but they don't cover a very wide area. They're very simple to avoid. So really the only thing you have to watch out for as a ranged DPS is trying to keep as much range as possible from your other members, because he does do a chain lightning that you see going off constantly there. And that ticks, I'd say, more than once a second from the damage I've seen. And if you get multiple people chaining together like you'll see me here do, because I'm a winner like that, the damage done is just massive. So you try and stay away as much as possible, and really try and melt his face before he melts yours, which is honestly what's going to happen here. Because I thought, well, I haven't died in a raid kill video in a while, so hey, it's about time, right? Yeah. And, you know, what better way to die during a raid kill than at the exact moment that the boss dies himself. So as you'll see him tick down, you'll see him call down one final dose of little fire bombs and melt my face. Here it comes. And Decaf's dead. Huzzah. But luckily he is down, and hopefully you enjoyed the council video, and hope to see you back for Cho'Gall, which we're hoping to be our final kill and our clearance of Bastion of Twilight.